What's up, world? What's up, Zion? It's Prince Easy coming at you again, once more, as usual. And of course, I do have a couple slides, with the exception of today, we're gonna do some light reading, right? So as we can, as per the title of the video, understand what is Amalek's MO, right? So that's gonna mainly be the focus of the video, right? And of course, we're gonna have some slight updates, right, pertaining to the geopolitical reality that we are living currently, right? So before we get to it, I want to issue a disclaimer for the material that's going to be shared here in this here video, right? Criticism, reporting, commentary, and whatnot, right? So let's dive into it. So I've heard strange things pertaining to this. Venezuela and sleeping dragons. Yeah, I don't know if it's the truth or what. They brought interesting remarks. Let's just say that. Now I'm waiting for our quote unquote professionals and scientists to come out and tell us what is this exactly. Right? Because it is poisonous to wildlife. So isn't it in our best interest to know what it is? So yeah. Okay, they're back at it, right? They're back at it. Trying to claim, right, the persecution of the marginalized group in Tanzania, right? And I know the Maasai are going to stand on business, right? They're going to stand on business. Yeah, this is 2026, right? What did the mayor do to dissolve a whole RPG, my guy? Hmm? So, more information is coming out, right? I haven't heard from what the Chinese have said. All they have said is that there is a corruption situation, right? So let me tag it like this. This is the first terrible idea. Let's just assume that this happened in the context that he secretly transferred nuclear secrets, right? Supposed nuclear secrets, right? And of course, it won't be the first time, nor will it be the last. We shall circle back to this. Of course, right? He's another traitor, another rat in a sinking ship. Other rats have figured out that the ship is sinking, but not this particular rat, right? The von der Leyen and the Callas, those types. I would like to see them in the battlefront in Ukraine, fighting for their convictions and whatnot. Yeah, I expected this to happen, right? Because of the political pushback, right, on their supposed entry into Gaza, right? Saying that, of course, the hostages and this and that, right? How about we first get the hostages and then we start the operation, right? The operation has started. They're not saying it, just like the last time. They're not saying it, right? But the attacks on Syria and Lebanon, all of those. coastal tourism. Look at that. We have the whole Elon here. Riviera. 6 to 8 dynamic modern cities. Elon Musk's smart manufacturing zone, industrial zone along the Israeli border. MSB ring and NBZ Central Highway and tram around Gaza. Gaza infrastructure rebuild and exploded bomb clearance, debris removal, utilities, grid rebuilding. The American data safe haven. Why? Special US AI regulation. Abrahamic infrastructure, railway pipeline, the Abraham Gateway, regional logistic hub in Rafah. The jokes almost write themselves, yeah? They are too proud, right? That's why they put their names in everything. So, this is, like I said, the second piece of that whole nuclear secrets from China. I don't think these people apprehend how arms races are basically started, right? Even in a simulation type scenario. All right. So let's just assume that the Russians now have to come to the reality that their sophisticated air defense systems can be rendered obsolete by the click of a button, right? By this supposedly discombobulating weaponry, right, from the US. So what would happen in a confrontation? That is the question, right? Let's just assume that they enter into a confrontation today, right, against China and Russia. What would happen? I need you to find the answers to that question. Think carefully. So, another important thing that they skimp over, right? Jasper and sardine. How or what color are they? So, going back to the main topic. So, what is it, right? This is the MO of Amalek, right? Amalek being the perpetrator of human suffering, right? As I shall attempt to demonstrate here, right? So, this is basically a summary, right? And this character, Alexander of Macedonia, is going to be the focus, if there isn't a better word for it. Right? So he come in, and of course, he's the first, right? He's the first. The first to do what? I shall show you. Right? Wherefore he came and sought to take the city, to spoil it, but was not able, because the city, having had warning thereof, rose up against him in battle. Right? So, what did he want? Right? His whole thing is to set up the abomination, right, in the altar of Jerusalem, okay, and spoil the sanctuary. That is his goal, right? And of course, on top of that, just like Nero, demanding worship, right, to be worshipped as God, right, because the abomination that he set up was to himself and his ilk or type, right? Why set up another on top of the other? Dominance and basically perversion, right? Perversion. It wasn't necessary, but again, they are fighting the creator. Okay? So let's get to it, right? And it happened after Alexander, son of Philip the Macedonian, who came out of the land of Chittim, had smitten Darius, king of Persia and Medes, that he reigned in his stead. Remember what we talked about? So he took over Persia and Medes. And of course, the first over Greece. Okay, what does that mean? He is the first outsider to rule Greece, right? As I've demonstrated in the previous video, that Greece and Romans were first African kingdoms and they were taken over by a vile and violent force, right? So setting up the foundation, right? So he smote Darius, king of Persia and Medes, right? And he reigned in his stead, meaning he kicked him out and ruled the Persians and Medes, right? And of course, he went far to Greece, right? And he made many wars and won many strongholds, right? And slew the kings of the earth, right? Not just kings in the supposed Middle East or Western Asia, but rather kings of the earth. Again, like I said, it's a conspiracy, right? And went to the ends of the earth and took spoils of many nations, insomuch that the earth was quiet before him, right? He stretched out his hand to every corner that there was something to take and people to rule, right? He was quite something, right? And went through the ends of the earth and took spoils of many nations, right, that we have read. And he gathered a mighty strong host and ruled over countries and nations and kings and kings who became tributaries to him, right? So the kingdom was put under his yoke by force or otherwise. We are going to see. And after these things, he fell sick and perceived that he should die. Wherefore he called his servants, such as were honorable, and had been brought up with him from his youth, and parted his kingdom among them while he was yet alive. Okay, so he took the kingdoms of the whole earth, made them tributaries to himself, and as he was nearing his death, right, he called his friends, right? He didn't have children. He called his friends that he grew up with and basically divided the kingdoms before he died, right, among them. So Alexander reigned 12 years and then died, right? So you can imagine these 12 years, the amount of blood, right? And his servants bear rule, everyone in his place, right? And after his death, they all put crowns upon themselves, right? They're self-coronated, so to speak. So did their sons after them many years, and evil were multiplied in the earth. Right? Again, let's continue. Right? And there came out of them a wicked root, Antiochus, surnamed Epiphanes, son of Antiochus the king, who had been, okay, I'm gonna butcher these names so you can read for yourself. Is you blind? Or maybe you are. Who had been an hostage at Rome, and he reigned in the 137th year of the kingdom of the Greeks. Right? In those days went there out of Israel wicked men, who pursued many, saying, Let us go and make a covenant with the heathen that are around about us. Since we are departed from them, we have had much sorrow. So this device pleased them well. Right? So they decided to negotiate, right, as they saw what was impending. Right? So this device, this plan was not agreed upon by all Israelites. Right? Again, I'm just giving you a so as we can communicate. Right? Not all Israelites agreed to this, right? But some of them who were basically wicked made this plan. Then certain of the people were so forward herein, right, that they went to the king, who gave them license to do after the ordinance of the heathen. Right? They were given permission. Whereupon they built a place of exercise at Jerusalem according to the customs of the heathen, and made themselves uncircumcised, and forsook the holy covenant, and joined themselves to the heathen, and were sold to do mischief. Okay? Just history. Now, when the kingdom was established before Antiochus, right, he thought the reign over Egypt that he might have the dominion of 2 realms. Right? Wherefore he entered into Egypt with a great multitude, with chariots and elephants and horsemen and a great navy, and made war against Ptolemy, king of Egypt. But Ptolemy was afraid of him and fled, and many were wounded to death. Thus they got strong cities in the land of Egypt, and took the spoils thereof. Okay? So after attacking all of these areas around, they also attacked Egypt eventually, right? After we taught them everything they know, right? Basically civilized them. Not by the sword, but by knowledge. And after that, Antiochus had smitten Egypt, he returned again in 140 and 30 years. 140 and third year, right? And went up against Israel and Jerusalem with a great multitude. Okay, remember they were already divided within themselves, right? Some wanted to negotiate, some wanted to make war, right? But that doesn't matter. A great multitude came upon them, all of them, right? And when they say Israel and Jerusalem, separating them, meaning 2 things, right? There were fights between the 12 tribes, and they were divided into 2, upper kingdom and the lower kingdom. And the only legit, or rather the only who had the right to rule, is Judah, right? But some individuals did not really like that, right? So they set up a king for themselves, right? Democracy and whatnot.
So all of them were attacked, right? And what happened? And entered proudly into the sanctuary, right? The holy place, right? Which was set up by the Israelites, right? The Africans, and took away the golden altar and the candlestick of light and all vessels thereof, and the table of the showbread, and the pouring vessels, and the veils, and the censers, right, of gold, and veil, and the crown, and the golden ornament that were before the temple, all which he pulled off. He took also the silver and the gold and the precious vessels. Also he took the hidden treasure which he found. And when he had taken all away, he went into his own land, having made a great massacre and spoken very proudly. Okay? Therefore, there were great mourning in Israel, in every place where they were. Right? Why? Yeah. Massacre. So that the princes and elders mourned, and virgins and young men were made feeble, and the beauty of women was changed. Every bridegroom took up a lamentation, and she that sat in the marriage chamber was in heaviness. The land also was moved for the inhabitants thereof, and all of the house of Jacob were covered with confusion. Okay, house of Jacob, Israel, Jerusalem. And after 2 years fully expired, the king sent his chief collector of tribute into the cities of Judah, who came into Jerusalem with a great multitude, and spake peaceable words unto them, right, after their massacre. But all was deceit, right? For when they had given him credence, he fell suddenly upon the city, and smote it very sore, and destroyed much people of Israel. Okay? So, a fake negotiation, right? And you know what? Niggas trust them, man. Despite of the massacre, right? They wanted peace, but it was a ruse. They got hit, right? And much people, the house of Jacob, were killed. And when he had taken the spoils of the city, he set it on fire, and pulled down the house and the walls thereof on every side, basically leveling, right? I know this sounds familiar, but this is history. But when the women and children took they captive and possessed the cattle, then build they the city of David with a great and strong wall, and with mighty towers, and made it a stronghold for them. And they put therein a sinful nation, wicked men, and fortified themselves therein. Right? Again, this obsession, right, to put another thing on top of the other. Right? So they build themselves the city of David. They have nothing to do with the Jacob lineage, right? Right? So they built a fake stronghold, right? A fake territory, right? For themselves. And inside that stronghold, they put a sinful nation, right? No Israel, not Jerusalem. Jacob was not. They stored it also with armor and victuals, right? Made it to a fort. Are you catching on? Right? Became a fort. And when they had gathered together the spoils of Jerusalem, they laid them up there, right? So everything that was taken from the Israelites was stored in this new fake city of David. They laid them up there, and so they became a sore snare. For it was a place to lie in wait against the sanctuary, and an evil adversary to Israel. Thus they shed innocent blood on every side of the sanctuary and defiled it. Right? So, as you can imagine, in every war, right, where did Jacob go? Did they head further north towards the cold, or did they go back to familiar lands, Egypt and Southern Africa? That's what they did, right? For those who were able. But for those who were not able, yeah, you can guess what happened to them, right? They were useless to them from their perspective, right? So they continue to defile, right? Meaning they continued to do things that made this holy place become less and less holy by doing much evil on top of it. You understand? Right? Hence the defilement. Okay, even today, right? If a person is killed inside a church or around the church compound or a mosque, there has to be a special ritual to purify. Why? It's because of that, right? So let's not even go to the people that sold slaves and what happened to that. But hey, that's what they did, right? We're talking about history. Even though in so much the inhabitants of Jerusalem fled because of them. Where did they flee to? Right? Before we read that there were enemies all around them. Right? All around them, there were enemies. Some tried to make peace, but they were betrayed and the city was under siege. Where did Jacob flee to? Right? They already took over the whole of what is now Europe. Right? They fled. Where did they flee to? Africa. Okay? Whereupon the city was made an inhabitants of strangers. You get it? The city of Jerusalem was made the inhabitant of strangers and became strange to those that were born in her, right? To the Israelites, the sons of Jacob. Okay? Their land was taken over by strangers, people they did not know. Right? And her own children left her. Right? Israelites basically pack up and leave. Right? And went into what we call now Africa. Okay? I'm sure it had its name, but history, right? Her sanctuary was laid waste like a wilderness, right? So complete and utter destruction of everything, right? The worship, the places of worship, the people, basically it was taken over. Okay? Her feasts, like I said, the rituals, her feasts were turned into mourning, her Sabbath into reproach, right? And her honor into contempt. Do you understand? The tweet, how everything just did an about turn. Okay? This is before they were taken into slavery and sold everywhere, right? Because they fled into Africa, this is why they invaded. in order to sweep up, to sweep up, to finish up the crumbs. But even that was not possible, right? But let me not make a tangent. So there was a perversion, right? The Sabbath, in other books, it is said, was basically abolished, right? It was abolished, right? There was no more singing, no more rituals. Why? Contempt. So you could die for standing on business, so to speak, right? As had been her glory, so was her dishonor increased, right? The greater the glory, the greater the dishonor, right? That is what happened to us. And her excellency was turned into mourning. Moreover, King Antiochus wrote to his whole kingdom that all should be one people, right? And everyone should live his law, okay? Basically abolishing every other form of worship, right? Having this one singular belief, right? I don't know how that was possible, but again, they had the swords and stuff. And everyone should live his laws, right? So all heathen agreed according to the commandment of the king. Yeah, many also of the Israelites consented to his religion and sacrificed unto idols and profaned the Sabbath, right? So again, it has to make a distinction, right? All the heathens agreed, right? Because they were high and mighty, right? They had spoils. They could not let anything spoil their party, right? So they went along to go along, right? And then, of course, because they did not receive the truth, they started to actively persecute the Israelites who actually stood on the truth, right? And it was so intense that some of them defected, right? And they left their faith, right? And took up idols and profaned the Sabbath, right? For the king had sent letters by messengers unto Jerusalem and to the cities of Judah that they should follow the strange law of the land, right? So this was the last straw of their takeover, right? So again, making it more and more inconvenient for the Israelites to live in Judea or Jerusalem for that matter. Hence, the moving, the fleeing, as we see in 38. And forbid burnt offering and sacrifices and drink offering in the temple, right? And that they should profane the Sabbath and festival days, right? Meaning they made an intentional effort to do their own rituals in the same days honored by the Israelites. Again, why do they go to such extents, right? Why do they go out of their way to do this? They were fighting against God and they knew, right? And polluted the sanctuary and the holy people, right? Set up an altar and groves and the chapel of idols and sacrifice swine's flesh and unclean beasts, right? So Israelites had traditions back then, right? That arose due to their daily lives, right? I don't want to get into the whole arguments between why they didn't want to eat pigs and all of this, right? But this is what they believe, right? This is what they believed. So what did these people do? They acted out desecration on the days which were supposed to be the celebration days for the Israelites. Okay? That they should also leave their children uncircumcised and make their souls abominable with all manners of uncleanness and profanation. Okay? So again, complete takeover. Like I'm talking full spectrum. Right? To the end they might forget the law and change all the ordinances. Right? Systematically. Again, like I said, there was a effort. And whosoever would not do according to the commandments of the king, he said, he should die. Right? In the self-same manner wrote he to his whole kingdom and appointed overseers over the people, over all people, commanding the cities of Judah to sacrifice, city by city. Right? Then many of the people were gathered unto them, to wit, everyone had forsook the law, and they had committed evils in the land, and drove the Israelites into secret places, and even whosoever they could flee for Sakawa. I don't know what that word is. Right? I never used about it. Right? It's Sakawa, I guess. If my reading is accurate. Right? So the true Israelites who did not want to profane the covenant fled and hid. Oh, now the 15th day of the month Casliu, in the 145th year, they set up the abomination of desolation upon the altar and builded idols. Right? Do you remember that warning Christ gave? Yeah, right? Nothing new under the sun. And buried idol altars to the city of Judah in every side. Right? So they made, again, an effort to set up their gods in our holy places, and burnt incense at the doors of their houses and in the streets. And when they had rent in pieces the books of the law which they found, they burnt them with fire. Okay? So again, like I said the other day, their intention was to make the Israelites no more in remembrance, to be forgotten. Right? So when you see these people over there claiming that, again, like I said the other day, to have continuity of faith, you should be like, nah, right? Nah. Right? The books were burnt, and whosoever was found with any of the books in the testament, or if any committed the law, the king commandment was that they should put him to death. Right? Thus did they by their authority unto the Israelites every month, to as many as were found in the cities. Now the 5 and 12 and 28th day of the month they did sacrifice upon the idol altar, which was upon the altar of God. Right? Again, desecration. At which time, according to the commandments, right? Again, why do you desecrate? You don't believe, right? From your perspective, this should be dolls, right? Like, but the fact is, it shows that they knew that there was something here which had power, and this is how they harness this power, right? By being some sort of middleman, ritualistically speaking. Right? At which time, according to the commandment, they put to death certain women that had caused their children to be circumcised. Right? Nobody was spared. And they hanged the infant about their necks and rifled their houses and slew them that had circumcised them. Right? Niggas did not catch a break. Howbeit many in Israel were fully resolved and confirmed in themselves not to eat any unclean thing. Wherefore they rather to die, that they might not be defiled with meats, right? And that they might not profane the holy covenant. So then they died. Okay? So that was a familiar narrative, right? Because again, after the Israelites fled to Africa, they did the same thing years later, right? After they ruined everything we had built, they went back to square one, right? So they had to come again, right? These kings who put them crowns on themselves, right? They had to do it again in coordination. What did they do? They attacked strategically. And of course, we cannot forget about the treaties of peace that were made before they came and took over, destroying everything that remained from those who fled Judea and Jerusalem to inner parts of Africa. And that is what now modern history calls colonialism, you know. So that is our story. Now you might have a, I don't know, might have a inquiry. Well, you can corroborate this story by pulling up other, because this is quite detailed, if you know what I mean, right? It was quite detailed, right? So even now, even today, they want to do the same thing. Okay? So, after the bubble has been built and has so much pressure, now these geniuses are coming up and saying, you know what, maybe AI should do something important to have a social permission. I don't know, whatever that means. Right? Talk about consent, right? To burn electricity on it, right? Because if people ask, then, well, why are you consuming so much of our power? Why are you doing all of this, our water and stuff, right? So what do you think? Are they gonna do anything important with it? I don't think so. So then what is left? Deceit. Right? Yeah, the Swiss are back at it, right? But now they slap AI on it, right? Not even that. Now you can do it with your loved ones, you know? This is that line that said many evils were multiplied, right? Evils were multiplied in the world. So, yeah. So if you are not an Israelite and you are quote unquote a king, this is where you got your power from Alexander.
and his compadres. So enough of that. We were given this. It was the will of the Creator for you to be wherever you are. Okay, again, as we are talking about history, we cannot forget, right, to talk about the Israelites, right? The Israelites, they fall off, right, as was punishment, right? Because again, some thought it was a good idea to backslide on the law, right? And to do all of these things that corrupt the soul, the mind, and the body all at once, because all of them are one, unless you are dead. But again, so this is why, right? Whatever they wanted to do to us is going to be done unto them. Okay? And the Lord himself will go to war with Amalek from generation to generation. Why? Because they stole a nigger's inheritance. That is why. So what is my suggestion? Give it back. Give it back. You know the owner. I know you know the owner. Give it back. Step away. If you want to believe the fallen angels, well, go on. Right? Go on. Go on. Right? Those are the gods and the idols you want to worship for power's sake. Right? It will not end well for you. Let's just say that. Right? And we have been going at it for a long time. Right? This here was pulled from the whole confrontation between the Amalekites and the armies of Moses, right? Another prince, right? He put his hands up, the Israelites win. He falters, they lose. Many, many battles with the children of Esau, right? Esau, Amalek, same thing, right? But this conspiracy now, Amalek. Because of their evil, conniving habits and perversion of everything, right? Of everything. You're just right now running a smear campaign against the Israelites by taking up their identity, right? And people now are saying bad things about Israel without even actually knowing who is Israel. Right? You set up your whole Catholic Church just full with lies, you know? Anyway, I'm gonna put a pin on it right there. And we are gonna hear from each other when we hear from each other, right? So yeah, Prince Easy, I'm gonna put a pin on it right there. I love you. Bye.